welcome to Business and Politics. Thank you for making time.
Thank you very much. Very nice to be here with you.
Okay. Do you mind if I call you just Richard or?
Please, I'll call you
Clink.
Clink is sure.
You know how Filipinos are. We love our nicknames, right?
Absolutely.
Well, I've always thought, that you're doing something pretty smart and pretty interesting, because your background is executive search. You have the successful events business going on, and of course, in the mix of all of this, you're here in the Philippines. Partly or mainly because you're married to a Filipina who's also a good friend of ours, Rebecca. I'm just wondering, the awards have been going on for more than a decade now, and but your core business, or how it got started, and correct me if I'm wrong, really was executive search. And I was wondering how those two interests are coming along, right? Or has the events part become so big now that that's become the main business, and the search has been sort of the ancillary activity now?
Sure. The event side started partly because of search. So in order to, to say to a client that, yes, we're active in the business community, we know people, events were nice things. We just never expected the Philippine economy to explode as it has, and our events kind of followed along.
Right.
So the initial purpose, though, was to highlight the good that was going on in Philippines, because there's lots of people talking about the bad.
Sure.
But we wanted to we'd be biased, only highlight the good. And the idea was to get international people, Filipinos doing great things up on the stage, everybody smiling, with the message that if they can do it, you can too, is the story. So our Events Agency Awards has become large, partly because of the talent here in Philippines. So people say it's the largest event of its kind in Southeast Asia, and it's a real grand thing. I will invite you to join, and everybody here, of course.
Well, how's the events going on? Because after the pandemic, of course, all the face-to-face events were disrupted. Are you back to normal? I know you were holding a number of events per month, and we were talking earlier that your pace now is about once a month. Is that where you were before the pandemic, or is it more or less? Or?
So we're back to, people really are, I don't know, revenge eventing, call it, or something.
They're eager to see people face to face.
People want to see each other and share the germs and all of that. So we were just in Cebu. It was a great standing room only, Clark, all these things. So it's really exciting. And the awards event will be the largest by far, if our nominations that we're receiving are indicators of that.
Well,
absolutely.
Yeah, that's very interesting. So how's the search part? Because that, I see that sort of like a barometer of how the economy is doing, right? If talent is in demand, but is it? Are companies looking to hire? What kind of people are they looking to hire?
It's a good question. Because it's a mixed bag. There are certainly sectors where it does seem to be coming back. It is coming back. Others where it's more difficult.
Sure.
Business process outsourcing is just, Filipinos are loved throughout this world for employees. Clink, so it's a really big opportunity where Filipinos are being skilled and working in global jobs and getting paid now global income. So it's very exciting.
Well, so you said that that's doing well. Are there other sectors that are not doing so well or lagging a bit behind? And is there other things other than BPOs that are hiring more than the other sectors?
From what I see, BPOs and companies or industries like real estate, for instance, that use a lot of office space and residential of workers.
Those ones are booming.
Those ones related to that are booming.
Okay.
Of course, tourism is returning. I know the Marriott and the Shang and so forth.
You work in that space as well.
Yes, the peninsula. We were just there, and it was hard to find a table despite their outrageous prices.
Sure.
So it's really doing well. Some say manufacturing is having a difficult time getting back. But mainly it's a good story.
Well, that makes sense, because that's why perhaps the government is looking at that sector as well, manufacturing, Let me go back to the awards, because I was looking at your website, and it says that And as I said in introduction, your purpose is to make the Philippines a premier destination for global enterprises. So I know that, as you do, that there's a lot of competition in Southeast Asia. We're living in the shadow of China, but in Southeast Asia, there's Singapore that's doing extremely well. There's competition from places like Vietnam and Malaysia, Indonesia. How are we doing from your perspective in terms of making that aim a reality?
Well, China has had a fantastic success over the past 20, now 30 years now, of course.
Yeah.
But like all the countries, there is a time limit to this, and they are now slowing. They've made, I think, some mistakes in making a few too many enemies of their customers and neighbors as well. We could, I'm not going to talk politics, but that's not a good...
So there's consequences to all those things that we read in the news, right?
All eyes now are shifting to Southeast Asia. Vietnam, Indonesia, Philippines, in particular, those three, because they're the largest young population, all that kind of stuff. So we have great respect for Vietnam and Indonesia, and we want them to do well. It's just that we want Philippines to do a bit better. So this is all of our responsibility to make sure that happens. So Philippines, though, seems to be going into a golden age for growth. The world, Klink, I can emphasize again, because of the work from home thing and the internet and so forth, everybody wants to work with Filipinos. So it is...
But why is that? What is it that, what is it with Filipinos that you think people are saying that? Is it because of the language? Is it because of the culture and values are very similar to North Americans and maybe to Europeans? Or is it something else?
It is something else. Not to put anyone else down.
No. We're just trying to understand, right?
It's well known that if you want to ensure that you get the client and somebody else doesn't, what you tell your client is, well, go to the site visits, go to Sri Lanka, India, Costa Rica, Colombia, wherever, and then come to Philippines. 8 out of 10, they'll say, we only want Philippines. We want to do business in Philippines and only Philippines. Now,
is that true for all sectors that you're talking about, or mainly for the few that you talked about, BPOs?
The few that I talked about in particular. The other ones, it's a...
Like manufacturing, I would think that,
manufacturing is a difficult...
go to China, Vietnam.
Yes, I think those sectors would do that, but those are difficult. I think I'm glad... Because you've got how many other competitors in manufacturing? In business process outsourcing, which includes virtually every other function you can think of, Filipinos seem to stand up above. People like working with Filipinos. They're, English, yes, international English is certainly a part of that.
We make a big deal about that, but, is it really that big a deal for, foreign businessmen coming? Because, I would think that the primary reason for going someplace is the potential returns, right? But how relevant or how impactful really is the ease of communication? Is that something that's very important, or is that something that we mentioned to ourselves that
it's key? It's key, especially when you're working online through a little screen. So, Indians, Sri Lankans, Costa Rica, they're all beautiful people, as we know, hardworking and all of that, but the extra difficulty of the accent and the cultural acclimatization. I know in India, it used to be standard that you would put American TV stations in the actual floors where people were working so that Indians could learn about American culture and so forth. Well, in Philippines, they're already doing that. They watch basketball, they watch American shows and all kinds of stuff. So they're much easier to acclimate with. So it's a key advantage Philippines has.
And is that, translatable to cost? Do they save on training for something that gives us an additional advantage over these places?
It's a good question, because Philippines is now one of the higher cost locations. But it's always the most desired, 15, 20% at least more expensive than India and some of these other places. But yet it's always the preferred or
Sure.
among the top preferred.
Oh, why is that? Is it because that the sector has flourished so much that they've tapped out all of the talent that's available? And so is it something else that's, impacting all businesses, right? The cost of doing business, the bureaucracy, the cost of energy,
Well,
et cetera, et cetera. Does that explain the higher cost?
Okay, throughout the world. Oh, why Philippines is higher
Yeah,
cost?
why is it more expensive?
Because the quality and the
Okay.
demand. It's a demand-supply situation. No other reason.
Okay,
India has 1.4 billion people to draw from,
right, I see.
whereas Philippines has less, still many people to draw from, but it's just the demand is higher.
I see.
And it pushes up the price. And what's going on in the rest of the world, in the so-called rich countries, but even many poor ones, is
Sure.
like Japan. Everyone's going the way of Japan, where there's fewer and fewer young people
Okay.
and fewer working age people.
Okay.
So that's why they're coming here
Okay.
to places like Philippines to
Right.
hire people.
Right.
So,
we have
this
that
is an
demographic
opportunity.
sweet spot that they said.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Philippines is in the Goldilocks age, the
Right.
golden age, when everybody needs young, pleasant people that you want to work with,
Sure.
who also have skills.
Sure.
But the rule is always, you can teach the skills, but you
Right.
want the mindset.
Right.
Because you can't teach that. So
Right.
this is why they're coming to Philippines.
Right. And in terms of making the country more attractive, what are you hearing from your clients? I know that we're excelling in the BPOs, right? But is
Sure.
there something else that maybe the government or maybe even society as a whole can do to make it even more attractive? I know all of the other countries are also doing their improvements. They're investing in
They
a
are.
number of things, right?
Good point.
So how do we keep up? I guess in terms of our competitiveness. You think?
Well, despite, sometimes I think Filipinos, it's always a surprise that they're such smiling, nice, fun people about most things except their own country. They're a bit too gloomy about
Okay.
themselves.
Okay.
But the rest of the world sees Philippines as one of the world's great growth opportunities. So there's many things that are going well. Now, the previous administration, Duterte, got infrastructure
Sure.
moving, and they are a big credit.
So that
for
resonates well with your clients?
Oh, tremendous.
Okay.
If they can, it used to be clients would be lost because they would arrive on the at the airport.
Yes.
And then the trip from the airport to the site
Right.
might be a 3-hour drive.
I see.
Especially if it rains or it's a payday or something
Sure.
like that.
Sure.
That's a bad thing. Now they're driving on beautiful elevated things. I see
Skyways, yeah.
point-to-point buses and
Yeah.
all the nice bridges and so forth. And then on the weekends, you can take them to Boracay. It was beautiful. It's another thing that he, took a risk to
Yeah,
save,
sure.
so to speak.
Yeah.
So all these have a big impact. So what else can be done? The red tape and so forth is I mean, we talked about this because
Sure.
Filipinos sometimes get the idea that red tape
They were
is
the only
something
one, right? Yeah.
only in Philippines. But
Yeah.
I'm telling you, Filipinos listening, it's everywhere.
Okay.
So anything that can be done to remove that,
Okay.
it is the one thing that, or one of many things the current Marcos administration is doing, is you see him now on the TV giving speeches
Sure.
to the world, saying all the right things about, we got to fight climate change and human rights, all the good stuff that should be talked about.
Sure.
So that gives Philippines a good face, right? So people feel comfortable now. Duterte, all the great things he did, and I would never, ever put anything down. I know it's popular now to kind of put him down, but he was
Sure.
a fantastic, him and his team,
Right.
the fantastic things they did. The one thing is, some of the things he said sometimes. Was,
Yes.
So that's all
Yeah.
I would say. This guy.
Well, on the business side, it was
Marcos,
welcome, right?
Fantastic. Marcos, now he's doing both. So it is very exciting. So we're coming into a time when, so I didn't really answer your question, but if they can remove some of the red tapes,
Yeah.
it takes, when you hear about Singapore where you can just get online
Sure.
with your computer and then 12 hours later you've got a business,
Yeah.
with all the permits and everything is done and you can go, you're in business, and then here it takes
Yeah.
months sometimes. That's
Sure.
So we can prove that.
Well, on that note, we'll just take a quick break. We're talking to Richard Mills of the Asia CEO Awards. We'll be right.